Councilwoman Cassie Chambers Armstrong is in with us in studio today. She represents District 8, that is much of the Highlands. And Councilwoman, let's start with this. We know this grant is going to be expanding access to emergency shelters, but this is a really big problem. I mean, what else is being done on a city level to address this?
So we know that the rise in domestic violence, a lot of folks are calling it the shadow pandemic because we've seen this rise in every community across America, and Louisville has not been immune. And so this is something that the Women's Caucus has really tried to shine a light on. We've had a lot of meetings about it, and we actually passed an ordinance to provide a week of paid leave to survivors of domestic violence who are Metro employees, to make sure that we're centering those victims, centering those survivors, and providing them with support, time off to consult a lawyer, to look for housing, to really make sure they're meeting their needs.
Certainly something that's on your radar. We also want to talk about the NDA sexual harassment ordinance. You filed the paperwork last month, and when you did that, you said NDAs allowed workplaces to cover up bad behavior and reinforce a culture of silence. So how do you think that this ordinance is going to remedy that?
So this ordinance would prohibit companies that get money, tax dollars from Louisville Metro government, from using NDAs as a tool to silence survivors of workplace sexual harassment. This is in the public interest. The taxpayers have a right to know that their dollars aren't being used to silence survivors and continue to perpetrate this culture where bad acts are covered up. And so luckily Congress passed a law, the Speak Out Act, unanimously last week that deals with some of these types of non-disclosure agreements, and our law would add just a little extra support to that.
And how would it work? How would you hold these businesses accountable?
So any company that receives more than $50,000, which is a lot of money from Louisville Metro, would be prohibited from entering into these types of non-disclosure agreements around sexual harassment unless it was the survivor that wanted to enter into it. If a company violated this, for example, if someone like Racing Louisville had entered into the agreement that we saw them enter into, they would have to pay back 10% of the financial incentive that they received. So in that case, that was a very large TIF that they received. They would have had to have paid back 10% of that.
And what happens next in the ordinance?
So it's slated to be heard in the next meeting of the Labor and Economic Development Committee. I've heard from so many people in our community that are supportive of this. They feel like when the taxpayers are in business with a company, that they really, they want to know that their money's not going to help to support this culture of silence. And so it's going to head to a hearing soon and then on to full Metro Council.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much for taking the time to come in here today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.